Any vulnerable group is going to be targeted by these kinds of people.
I was cornered after school by some older kids who roughed me up. They said that I was a faggot and that I should die and go to hell where I belong.
Tonight, a tragic news story about a growing problem in schools across America, bullying. This sixth grader's parents say he was picked on at his Massachusetts school by students who called him gay, said he was feminine. Carl later hanged himself.
Homosexuality is not God's best.
There must be something very wrong with me, I thought. Something I could never let my family or anyone else know.
If this is biological, would you change your position?
No. You say, well, because I have natural impulses toward the same sex, I shouldn't have to rein them in. Well, I disagree.
I'd like to energize the conservative and Christian base in Houston and get them out to vote.
Out to vote against Anise Parker. She's pictured at the front alongside her longtime partner under the headline, "Is this the image Houston wants to portray?"
I remember when Elaine Noble first ran for office in Massachusetts, and she had to have 2 state troopers with her at all times to protect her life. Her house window was smashed and her car tires were slashed.
I watched my mom come out and I watched the difficulty of people's reactions to her, and I swore I was never going to be gay.
There was kind of double teasing in the sense, for me at least, of my being Asian and then my potentially being gay. And all the bullying that you hear about, I certainly endured.
I remember one time in high school, I was dating my first boyfriend. We were walking the halls for the high school, and one specific guy just started shoving my boyfriend into lockers, like, over and over.
I was the 8th child of migrant workers. There was a lot of fear about school and society and everything else because you were poor. You grew up poor, and you grew up on what was considered the wrong side of town.
From the time that I was 8 years old, I cross-dressed, because it was the woman inside that was screaming to get out. So I kept all this hidden. And I was very ashamed, because I knew that it wasn't going to fly.
For whatever reason, everything was telling me I'd be a lot smarter if I didn't tell people what I was doing, if I was going out and seeing people.
My first love, we were living on a military base in Germany. I was 15, hormonal, and just insanely in love. And her parents found out about us and separated us. So I spent night after night after night sitting in the dark, staring up at her window in the morning, and I'm laughing about it now, but it was emotionally very difficult. And I, being socially awkward, I became a cutter. And I have a whole series of scars on my arm from that time.
One of the things I did was I went through Scouts, and so I went to military school. And I was commissioned as an officer in the military. And a year and a half later, I was forced out.
My family, Catholic, were very religious. So the religious angle always came in, and you can't be lesbian and be spiritual. I would say, Lord, take this away from me.
It took over a decade for me to come to terms with who I am. When I started practicing law, during my interview, the managing partner said to me, "I hate radical feminist dykes," which is what I considered myself at the time to be.
Early in my coming out process, I really thought that I would face a choice between being out and pursuing the career of my dreams.
In my 6th grade autobiography, I wrote that I wanted to be either a baseball player for the St. Louis Cardinals or a United States Senator. But I wasn't a very good hitter, so I think that torpedoed the baseball thing. As I grew older and came to terms with my sexual orientation, I figured the United States Senator was out the door as well.
Being gay made me wonder whether I could have a career in politics, or if I could get elected, how far along could you go?
I always worried that being openly gay would limit my career opportunities, but I was substantially more worried about being unhappy for the rest of my life if I didn't come out.
It was so clear to me that if that was who I was, I had to live my life that way. I met my partner, and once we moved in together, which of course with lesbians happens really quickly, we decided to never disguise that fact.
My running for office was a coming out for everyone in my family. They had to realize that the folks that they go to Bible study with and they see in the grocery store and they see in the drugstore are all going to read the front page of the newspaper. They're going to know that they have a gay kid. And so my mom came about every other Saturday morning and went block walking for me. And she came up on a doorstep one day and the man opened the door and said, "Well, you're Jeanette Burns, you're in my wife's Bible study fellowship class." And she said, "Oh yes, I am." And they talked and visited about their families, etc. As my mom was wrapping up, she said, "Oh, and yes, you know, the point of my being here is to ask you to vote for my son." And he said, "It's such a shame that you feel that you have to go out and promote someone you know is going to hell." And it shattered my mother.
I did have colleagues who were very direct about saying, "I think this is a sin and I think you're going to go to hell." I knew that people would be watching me. I really reached out to my colleagues. As a woman who has worked in a man's field for many years in the restaurant business, I knew that I had to work harder, and I tried to do that from day one.
My being gay, while it may have made it slightly more difficult for me to run for office and to do other things, actually made me far better suited to do so than I ever would have guessed. And in some ways, it's actually made it so that I could be present to things in my life that I wouldn't have been had I not been in some sort of minority community.
One of the papers said 4 strikes against her and she still won. Female, Hispanic, lesbian, Democrat.
When we win and can demonstrate competence and ability and a real integrity in our work, it does so much to advance equality for our community.
I understand that for many people I'm a symbol, but the things that make me a good role model for my community are also what make me a good representative for the city of Houston.
Clearly having a seat at the table matters in terms of being able to help my colleagues change their minds, change their hearts on these issues.
It's really sobering to think about what happens in rural areas. I feel their loneliness sometimes and just having to live only part of their lives in those communities. And it's also dangerous for some people. We've had people beaten on the street here just because somebody thought they were gay. Some of them weren't even gay, they just looked it. That's why I do this job. I can be a voice for people whose lives are at risk every day just by that chance that people might find out that they are gay or transgender.
I believe that we need role models that show people who have any questions or any doubts or any fears that this is what can happen.
I wouldn't change anything because it's been a very wonderful and productive life.
It matters that a young person can say, "Oh, there's been an openly gay person elected to the United States Congress. Maybe there are limitless possibilities for me when I grow up." A young man from a very rural part of Illinois who had been, like me, really interested in politics, and as he began to come out to himself, experiencing the same thing I did in college of, you know, do I have to make a choice between being who I am and pursuing something that I'm so interested in, he was quite depressed. What he told me is that he had discovered information about my election to Congress at the same time he was contemplating suicide. And he said, "You helped me discover that I can do anything."
We just have to continue being out, being proud, and making people understand that we ultimately just want to lead fulfilled lives.
To show that it's possible to succeed, it's possible to overcome, I think we need to tell those stories. We have to do something to help.
We must destroy the myths once and for all, shatter them. We must continue to speak out